This is part 2 of the murders of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope, and if you haven't seen part 1, I highly suggest you go back and watch it because otherwise none of this will make sense. So at the end of part 1, we talked about how the police decided that there was no such thing as the Ketch, and the mystery man did not exist either, despite there being over 54 reported sightings of the Ketch and possible sightings of Ben and Olivia after New Year's Day. Police just still decided, no, they don't exist. And that's because they had already made up their mind about who the prime suspect was. That would be our friend here, Scott Watson, who police believe bore a striking resemblance to the mystery man. And just to refresh your memory about what the mystery man looked like, here are 3 separate composite sketches taken from witnesses who saw the mystery man on the night of December 31st, 1997. Now compare that with this photo taken of Scott Watson the night of December 31st. This is the actual evening that Ben and Olivia disappeared. He has a short, close cropped haircut, which is vastly different to the multiple sightings of the mystery man. But nevertheless, police felt they had their man, and in fact, detectives even said to media that Watson, quote, stuck out like dog's balls. And when asked to further elaborate on why he felt this way, he simply said he was, quote, the right sort of pedigree. Apparently, he just had a gut feeling about him. And look, it's true that Scott Watson is not the greatest guy. He actually has a pretty big rap sheet for petty crime in his teens, a history of hitting on women that is a little inappropriate, but none of that proves anything about him having any involvement with the disappearance of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope. Another major issue is the fact that Scott Watson's blade, which was just a small sloop, is nothing like the glorious huge Ketch that Guy Wallace and the other 2 witnesses in the dinghy reported dropping Ben and Olivia off on. In fact, it's said that Olivia was apparently claustrophobic, and so it seems highly unlikely she would ever have agreed to sleep in such tiny quarters as that of Scott's sloop, which is seen on the bottom here. But of course, police had an answer for that too. They just said that because Scott had tied his boat to 2 others, given the overcrowding in the area, Guy Wallace and the other 2 witnesses simply saw an illusion of a big yacht, a big Ketch in the darkness, when actually it was 3 boats tied together. Seems suspicious, especially given the 54 other sightings of the Ketch in the days following the disappearance. But no matter, police felt they had their man, although they knew that they needed more than a gut feeling to bring Scott Watson to trial. So they seized his sloop and searched it. They retrieved a blanket off a bed in his sleeping quarters, and although it had a lot of hair on it, it didn't have any hairs that matched that of Ben or Olivia. The sloop, they noted, had been cleaned, and they said that this was because he was cleaning up after having disposed of them. However, and this included cleaning inside cassette tapes, but Scott said he had recently sailed across the channel between the North and South Island. I just had a brain fart. I can't even remember what it's called. And that can be notoriously rough. So he'd gotten a lot of salt water inside, and salt water can be extremely damaging when it is left uncleaned. And that is why he was cleaning even the inside of his cassette tapes. He also painted the boat the day after, on New Year's Day, but that was pre-planned as well. And all of these things can be taken to look suspicious and creepy if that's the lens with which you're viewing it. But a lot of ordinary behaviors can appear suspicious when actually there's nothing more to it than coincidence. Now, here's where things get very controversial. Police retrieved some hairs from Olivia's bedroom so that they could hopefully compare them to any of her hairs they might find on the blade. Now, they put them in a little baggie after taking them from her house and took them to ESR, which is the Forensic Testing Laboratory here in New Zealand. And mysteriously, the day that they received these hairs for testing, they looked at the blanket again, and what do you know? Bob's your uncle. There's 2 of Olivia's hairs on the blanket. Now, she had long blonde hair, so the first time that the blanket was examined, you would have thought, and even the scientist admitted, that they would have stood out. They would have seen them. So the fact that they searched it the first time, didn't find a thing, and then the day that they get given sample hairs is when they find them on the blanket, suspicious. Then it turned out that the bag that was holding the sample hairs actually had a cut in it. And it's possible that either the officer cut the bag or the scientist, when cutting the bag to open it to get them out, accidentally cut it and it had a hole in the bottom. Now, the cop never actually counted the number of hairs that they placed in the bag to begin with, so they've never been able to say that it was cross-contamination. But it's those 2 hairs that convicted Scott Watson. Once they had that evidence, they took him to trial and he was found guilty, and he's been sitting in prison for 26 years because of 2 hairs that suspiciously arrived on a blanket. So, what do you think about that? Most New Zealanders think he is innocent and he got railroaded by the cops, who just had tunnel vision and wanted to get their guy, ignored the 54 reports of people citing the catch, a friend of Olivia's claiming to have seen her on the 2nd of January and she asked her for help. None of that mattered because they just wanted to nail Scott Watson. And the thing is that it's true he's not a likable guy, but we don't convict people for how nice they are. If our justice system is to work as it should, we convict them on the basis of irrefutable evidence, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But there is definitely reasonable doubt in the case of Scott Watson. So, he's actually he's got another appeal in May next year. So you never know. Maybe there's hope. But poor man's, he should not be in jail. I'm sorry.